Our first story deals with a subculture of heavy metal music that some feel is sending a dangerous message to your kids.
The forces of evil on the dark side of devil right.
And I want to talk tonight about the devil and demons and witches and wizards.
And we just mix it up with hardcore and aggression and come out with something we think's an original sound.
Loud, fast, heavy, you know.
Well, what do you got?
What do you got?
You're listening to Riff Worship, the podcast that attempts to answer the age-old question, what makes a riff? Why do we care about the riffs? Talking about a bunch of albums from this year featuring some of our favorite riffs. I'm one of your hosts, Austin Paulson. With me, as always, are my friends in music, my friends in the new year. It's definitely 2025. Dylan Adams, Justin Swindle, how are you? How are you in this new year?
Great. I'm glad we left 2024 in the past.
Clearly.
My voice sounds great also.
I'm so sorry.
It's okay. I do it for the love of the game. I love to talk, you know.
Dylan, how are you?
Good. Christmas was what it was. The year is over. Thank God. I'll turn 35 in about a week. Halfway there. With all of us identifying male individuals on this episode, we are halfway there because our lifespan is not that long because we do stupid shit. So I'm halfway there. That's how I'm viewing it. Got past my Jesus year a couple years ago.
What's 34? Anybody at 34?
No, there's nothing.
All right.
No one's ever been
there.
34 before.
Yeah.
Just skip right over it.
Right.
200 years ago, I would already hit my life peak and just fell apart.
Tough luck.
Yep.
Well, we're gathered here today for another end of the year list. We made it. We made it through another one. 2024. I mean, I'll probably talk about this when we actually get into the records, but I think right out of the gate, I kind of realized that, wow, we got a lot of amazing releases that are going to be coming out this year. I mean, there was a bunch of shit in January that came out. There was a lot of anticipated records that dropped and did not disappoint. I know a lot of them made our list today. We've talked about this a bit off air. This is by no means a ranked list. This is just 10 records that we really wanted to talk about. We wanted to highlight. I never really understood the point of doing that because I mean, all of my releases. I'm looking at them. I mean, they're just so different. It's hard to compare this one to this one. They're just different records, and they're not even all the records that I really wanted to talk about. But we'd be here all night talking about some of our favorite records from this year. So we'll highlight a few at the end, but for the most part, this is just kind of 10 records each of us picked. Some of us share some records, but it's just 10 records that we really wanted to highlight and discuss this year, I think.
I mean, it's kind of what my approach was with doing the reviews too. I'm not going to review something I don't like. If I'm spending the time to listen to it and really, dissect it and go into it, it's got to be something I like, rather than ranking something or saying, oh, this one's the best and this one's the worst. Why would you listen to something that's bad? Why would you listen to something that's inherently bad for the sake of listening to it? That's, why waste your time? We don't have much time left as it fucking is. Listen to shit you enjoy, talk about shit you enjoy. And there are so many records that all of us listen to this year, maybe except for Swindle, because Swindle doesn't like music. But,
right.
There's a lot of records here that we've all listened to and loved. And these are just a few of them that we just wanted to talk about today. I've had this past year, I did more reviews of records I enjoyed than I probably ever have or ever would have thought of. And this is just scratching the surface of it. Even getting to those reviewed albums was like a feat. So yeah, this is just shit that we dig and we want to talk about, and there's no ranking system.
I really had to expand my horizons to enjoy 10 records this year.
Well, you know what's crazy? I think maybe last year where you were trying to figure out stuff to fill spaces, you had an overabundance of stuff. You're I don't know which 10 I'm going to talk about. You had a few on the leftover. I did want to ask, I just was kind of thinking about this. Looking over at your list, without giving anything away, is there anything you noticed? Was there any sort of patterns or like through line? Was there something that sticks out to you in the 10 that picked, maybe based on like your listening habits?
My picks don't feel good. They
Yeah.
Yes. It's not a happy list.
It's kind of, I think that's going to be the arcing thread, because I'm looking at mine and it's mental illness and anger.
Yeah.
Like legitimately.
I got a lot of, there's some 3 pieces on here that I noticed. Definitely angry. A lot of variation as well. And like kind of maybe bands that like, I don't want to say like shoehorn, but they included stuff that maybe isn't like what you would normally think about when you think of like certain genres, like death metal or grind. They included something else with it, something else that like really caught my ear. But all the same, just bleak records, very anxiety kind of driven, just visceral bullshit. But I really liked it. There was a lot of that this year for sure.
And what's going to be fun too is, I don't mean to cut you off, you mentioned anxiety, and all 3 of us suffer this. But our anxieties are different. So the records we're going to talk about have like a different anxiety level to it, right? Of like, if it's a doom laden thing, or if it's a grind laden thing, or if it's like a technical death metal thing, like all of those have their own anxieties to them when you listen to them, and like a kind of a chaos sphere going on. Not to quote a Meshuggah record, but yeah, anyway.
Well, I suppose without further ado, if we want to get into this, Justin Swindle, what was your first record that you wanted to talk about this year?
Actually, after having said that almost all my records are sad, I'm going to start us off with a record that is not. It doesn't share a feeling with any of the other records on my list. I'm going to start with Playing Favorites by Sheer Mag, which to my surprise was put out by Third Man Records. I would have never guessed that I had a record by Third Man Records on my top 10 list.
I do. It is funny you said that. I like when I was doing radio and had a show that was kind of more in line with a lot of that stuff, keeping track. Jack White's label surprisingly signed a lot of bands that were like, oh, this isn't just, something derivative of the White Stripes or whatever. Like they signed Sheer Mag, Hotline TNT, fellow Nashville band Snooper put out a record on that label. So there was like a lot of kind of variation and like surprising like underground music that I had already really, really liked.
They put out the Boris release. They've done stuff with the Melvins. They put out possibly the Last Sleep record with the Sciences. So yeah, Third Man's released some pretty weird shit. I hate giving that guy any sort of like credit, but he's at least put a really good record label together, and he's at least got a venue that's going to be kind of cool that I have not had a chance to visit, but I believe we're getting to see somebody there in the next month.
Which one's that?
It's the Blue Room, right?
Oh, the Blue Room, is it? Oh,
that's
sense.
the Blue Room, correct? But yeah, that's the only time you'll hear me give credit to Jack White.
So what about this record did you like?
It's very lighthearted. It's fun. It's happy. The guitar tones are very warm. There's a lot of dueling guitar harmonies, like Thin Lizzy or Allman Brothers. They wear that era of music on their sleeve, the 70s and 80s, like rock, and the vocals are kind of like akin to Michael Jackson or something like that.
Yep.
But one thing that I hate about that era of music is just how many times I've fucking heard all of that bullshit. And the vocalist and the vocals breathe like a new air of life into this classic rock genre that I typically ignore.
Yeah,
I really love that record.
It's a fun record. That's a hell of a record. That was a suggestion from you. That was kind of thrown at me like, hey, you're probably going to like this. It's got, harmonies out the ass on it. And I had a chance to review it and really fucking enjoyed that record a lot. Like that was kind of a weird pick for me to even dig into, right? Kind of reminds me of that Roswell Kid band just a little bit.
Sure. They got some they got some cool guitar lines in that band for sure.
The Michael Jackson kind of vocal styling for sure. Like get that early Jackson 5, Michael Jackson influence there. Maybe even some Anthony Green kind of influence to the vocals as well. Like that kind of almost, I'm a dum-dum, so like soprano, falsetto kind of range there.
There was a lot. I remember there being like a lot of variation too with the songs. Like you got like those classic rock songs, those like tried and true kind of guitar harmony stuff. But then there's like a disco song, and there's some like songs with like twang on it, and I mean, really just great performances all around. So it's cool to hear that you picked that. So awesome.
It was a lot of fun.
My list is kind of in chronological order here. I just went from like, I think that just kind of helped me kind of refresh going through the year. This one came out in January. It was maybe the first like record from the year that I got like really stoked on. Upon Stone, their debut record, Dead Mother Moon, Century Media. I had never really heard of this band before. The single came out. I'm not even exactly like just following stuff. You see stuff get posted all the time. Heard some of the singles, went back and listened to their debut EP, Where Wild Sorrows Grow, which came out in Creator Destructor. I fucking love this record. I would describe this record as being like an earworm, and like everything about it from like, I mean, really, it has such a profound sense of melody and like all of like the guitar work on this, right? This is like a like amazing guitar record. I believe it's Gouge and Ronnie. Amazing work on this record. Lots of fun lead stuff going on here, but it's just so catchy. I mean, I'll catch myself going through some of the guitar stuff and just like humming it in my head. It just stuck with me all year long. And I think that's like kind of an unfortunate thing sometimes with those records that get released in January. It's like some of them get forgotten or like put to the wayside with some of the other stuff that came out this year, but I never forgot this record. Incredible. It's definitely for fans of like melodic death metal. Like you could certainly throw in like At the Gates in there, In Flames, but there's a lot of like really cool atmosphere as well. There's some like really cool like acoustic passages as well. Brian Fair does like some guest vocals on this as well. Fucking amazing record.
It's definitely a throwback to that early kind of early 2000s kind of Gothenburg influenced metalcore that was around, i.e. Shadows Fall, Darkest Hour, Killswitch Engage, that sort of stuff. But it sounds very fresh. It sounds very uplifting. I believe The Butcher, Andy Williams, is where I heard about this band. I think he shared it on Twitter. And I was like, all right, I got to check this shit out. And then I saw that Taylor produced it as well. Saw that and went, okay, let's just dig into this. And you realize it's a pretty quick record, 28 minutes maybe.
It's about that. It's like 31.
Yeah. The songs are focused. They're direct. They've got dueling guitars. They have more atmosphere than maybe some of those early metalcore records did. They kind of pulled more from that Gothenburg sound and maybe some of the folk influences of that as well. It seems very genuine too. Like it's not just like, hey, we're doing this because it's a thing. It seems very much a genuine project.
Yeah, I know Ronnie. I used to do a radio show, and I've mentioned a couple of times where I'll connect like random artists together. And when I read some of the influences, one of the big ones was Gary Moore. Like Ronnie's a huge Gary Moore fan, and that definitely comes through in some of the guitar playing on this record as well. But yeah, if you haven't checked it out, I definitely recommend it. You won't be disappointed.
All right, I get to bring it down again. My first pick is Ulcerate's Cutting the Throat of God, which came out on June 14th of this past year. Ulcerate's a band I've been into for quite some time. I really enjoyed their album that came out at the early part of the pandemic, which was the last record you saw from them. This is one of the bleakest records I've heard all year long, possibly the most despairing and bleak record I've heard the entire year. I mean, Jesus, it's like a journey into madness. It almost feels like an individual fighting their battle with their religion or who they may be. It's not a record that's meant for it's not a lighthearted record. It's not meant for anybody that may be having a difficult time. It's a dense record. It feels like one solid piece. There's really not a single thing in there that it's really hard to separate pieces out of this record because of what it is. Everything flows seamlessly into itself. It's very much you've got elements of death metal, black metal, even post rock in it. I don't know if the subgenre post death has ever been, cemented, but this would be the flagship band of that because there's so many elements of this record that are just terrifying and with the dynamics. And this band shares a lot of elements with a Portal or a Gorguts or, bands of that vein, to where there's still some anonymity to this band too. You don't know a whole lot about them. They don't talk about their lyrical process, their songwriting process very often. It's pretty fucking terrifying. I mean, that's the only way to describe this record. It is a terrifying experience. The songwriting is tremendous on this, where it just flows. It almost feels like the first note of the first song is in the last note of the last song. It all ties together. The drumming on this record is absolutely flawless, which is a characteristic of every Ulcerate record. The guitars and bass almost feel like soundscapes, even on top of the drums at certain points. One thing I want to say with the guitar tone on this record is there's not a shitload of gain on it. It very much feels like it's just got these washes of guitar sounds. You can hear every individual note, almost every pick attack on the string. I could go on and on about this record. It's an experience. If you're a fan of like Neurosis, Portal, any of those bands like that, and you like really depressing movies, throw this shit on, put the movie on mute, and just let it play. But a couple tracks I would suggest would be the title track itself and To See Death Just Once, which are terrifying.
And if you want to hear Dylan go more in depth with this album, he actually did do like a full-on review of it. So that's on our page. You can access that as well. But yeah, man, I remember when this came out and you being pretty stoked about it, anticipating the record.
Terrifying, like chills just thinking about it at this point. Don't listen to this one in the dark. Go outside, touch grass, get in some sun after listening to this, because you're gonna fucking need it.
My next pick is the album Glitter and Spit by the band No Man. Iodine Records put out this album. It's kind of like a mixture between hardcore, post-hardcore, and screamo. They do a lot less of the like slow, melodic, melodramatic stuff from the screamo side. I didn't realize that the people that made up this band were in the band Majority Rule from like the late 90s and early 2000s, but it makes sense because Majority Rule kind of played that same like style of music. The album like starts off with a riff that like could be a garage rock like indie riff, but like a little weird, like a little more chromatic and wonky and like a dancey beat. But then the vocalist just like screams and they fucking rip into hardcore. In that first song, there's a line that's that the vocalist says, "I've got Stockholm Syndrome in my mind," and I fucking love that line. The title track of the album reminds me kind of Super Unison, some of the guitar work and like some of the vocals in a softer part. The song Poison Darts has like a really big, interesting riff at the beginning and is very dissonant. The guitar work is there's not very much space. It's very dense, very driving. The last two songs on the album kind of take a different tone than the rest of it. The song Burning Skulls is like kind of like a post-punky sounding song with like singing vocals, and I think Damar is an instrumental track with an acoustic instrument that sounds very Middle Eastern, and I know the vocalist is Palestinian. I'm not sure about the rest of the people in the band, but also it's great to have like a Palestinian person singing about the way they experience life, and like we all know what's happening right now in the world with Israel and Palestine, so it's great to hear the take from that person.
I have to check that out. I didn't listen to that one this year, so I appreciate it. I'm gonna be doing a lot of that probably this year.
Yeah.
Trying to do catch up. My next pick is a band. They're a 3-piece out of Philly, I believe, by the name of I Flies. I first got introduced to this band maybe a handful of years ago. It used to feature a member of Full of Hell on guitar. I think definitely kind of formed in the mind of with the Melvins, like, hey, I want to be in a Melvins type project. And I mean, like, their name is literally lifted from a Melvins song. I really love their first record, Tub of Lard, I believe it's called. And then they came out on Thrill Jockey Records. It's a Chicago-based label. This is their second for that label. It was released in January. It's the self-titled record. They're a 3-piece. I know there are some current and former members of the band Backslider. There's also a producer who has put out or helped put out at least one or a few of my favorite releases from this year. Or like Kevin Bernstein, I works at Developing Nations. I think they also make guitars and whatnot too. But this is probably the most, I would say, straightforward record on my list in that, and that's not a bad thing. I think this is just like, kind of like we talked about in the Crowbar episode. This band finds like, here's the riff. There might be a couple other parts, but we are going to fucking hammer this into your skull for the whole duration of the song. And that kind of persists through the whole album. Like the riff holds the foundation, and like really what makes it so unique too is like all of the other layers that are going on. The vocals are like very gruff sounding, definitely kind of like a King Buzzo thing, or even like some Matt Pike sounding stuff as well. There's a lot of like kind of noisy feedback elements to it, but I mean, it really is just like a fun, sludgy kind of noise. It's like, it's so sleazy. Like the guitars are like completely fuzzed out, but not in a way that just makes them sound like fucking sound, like just a wall of sound. Like there's still like plenty of articulation and sharpness to it. The drums are fucking huge. I mean, if I'm going to keep comparing, I don't want to keep comparing this band to like the Melvins, but I mean, that Dale Crover kind of like snap on that snare. They're just so big sounding. Like, I think Kevin did a really good job capturing. I mean, who better to understand your band than you yourself if you're in it? Such a great record. Definitely some standout tracks on this. Sleep Forever, Draining Pus, and Anarchy Zoo. I mean, those are just like some like world-ending, fucking so much fun riffs, especially that last track, Ben Anarchy Zoo. I hope I'm pronouncing that right, but I mean, I feel like all of the songs, like they kind of read like some of them read like Draining Pus just sounds like a fucking trauma, like Toxic Avenger type of track to me. Tearaway, Face Plaster. I don't know. It's just such a fun record. Sometimes you just need like something that's straightforward. This is what you get. Like there's no frills or anything like out of the ordinary, really. Like it's just like a fun, fucking grimy sludge noise rock record. So if you haven't checked it out, definitely do it.
I've got a straightforward record on my list, but we're not talking about this right this second. I'm talking about Job for a Cowboy's newest release in Moon Healer, released by Metal Blade Records on the 23rd of February. It's a much anticipated album from the enigmatic tech prog death adjacent band. It's been 8 years since 2014's Sun Eater. This album is a companion piece of sorts to that record. Subtle changes, maybe a bit more focused in songwriting and even the production a little bit. I know a lot of the gripes from Sun Eater was that the bass was too loud, which is never a problem for me. But I would even argue that the bass is still very present on this record, maybe a little bit more subtle in certain areas. It's not overeating anything else. The production is great on this. Another Jason Sukoff production that he's worked with the band since, I believe, Ruin Nation back in like 2009, 2010. It's just an extremely focused technical death metal record without it seeming like it's wanky. The songs don't suffer from it. It's not riff soup, as I've described many times. Everything feels like a purpose. It serves the song. All the songs kind of flow thematically together as well, but you can still listen to a specific song and still enjoy that for what it is. as I mentioned, the bass playing on this record is fucking tremendous. We had a great sit down interview with Nick Shingelis around the time of the album's release, and we dove into a lot of things, and he gave us a really good amount of his time and was very kind and really thankful for that experience as well. But his bass playing on here is the thing to really pay attention to, right? I mean, he's influenced by many players. I would argue to say that Ryan Martini of Mudvayne is a big influence of his, of how he plays and his technique. Really sticks out on this record. Johnny Davies' vocals on this record are fucking crazy. It's the muck monster, as it's been described in past. The guitar playing on this album is stellar. There are riffs all over this thing. It doesn't feel like it's just a part to serve a part. Like, all the songs are generally written around one to three riffs in there, and everything's just kind of expanded upon. Definitely feels like a return to form for the band a bit. Sun Eater had been out for so long and like started to build up some love for it. You know, it was a different direction for the band, and this is a continuation of that. I would love to see more from this band. Hopefully it's going to take a lot less time than 8 years. But a great fucking record. A couple tracks to really stick into for this would be Into the Crystalline Crypts and The Forever Rot, which was a single. Tremendous album. Loved it. Also, the artwork is fucking bonkers.
Just to add, I mean, as someone who did not grow up listening to this band and really being introduced to them through, I mean, I had probably heard a few tracks before. This is the first album I really like sat with and listened to. Awesome record. Really incredible experience. And then, yeah, talking to Nick about it and kind of watching you dive into it on your review, which you can check out now. Yeah, I love this record. I thought it was a great, I guess, welcome back. But for someone who just being introduced to him, really, fantastic record.
Shifting gears a whole lot. My next record is A Chaos of Flowers by Big Brave. There ain't no parts. There ain't no parts to these songs. Big Brave is anti-riff. Fuck riffs 2025. We're moving through art. We're moving in art through minimalism in the new year. This album is fucking dense. The sound is. All the vocals are poems that the vocalist Robin enjoys from poets they enjoy. I love Robin's vocals. They really like move this album along. Considering this band is like very atonal, very noisy. And this album specifically, there's a lot less like drum parts on this album. Her vocals do a lot of the heavy lifting for this band, not in like a bad way. The first song, I Felt a Funeral, you really get a taste for like what this entire album is going to be, because the first half of the song is essentially just atonal noise, and then the second half of the song there is like an actual part, like not riff, and I'll say an anti-riff, but like a part that just drones on for the second half of the song, and Robin's vocals are just like great, and the whole album essentially moves on in that same direction. The last song, the album Moonset, is kind of like, if there were a riff on this album, Moonset is the closest song to that. But yeah, I saw them live this year for the first time, and I fucking loved it. I just like fucking stared. Just
Not you.
just I think everyone there, we all just stared and like just took in this fucking wall of sound that was being thrown at us.
Yeah.
Look, he's having a wonderful time.
He's having the best time.
I am not familiar with this band at all, but I've heard you two discuss this band for, God, a handful of years at this point, kind of back and forth, you know, just via message. And I'm sure there are there were bands before this one that each of the members were associated with or have been associated with since this point. Because that seems to be, that's a kind of a trend with you guys, is if you find one artist you guys are a really big fan of, you will always try to dig in and see maybe what that artist is into. Even if it's something you don't necessarily enjoy, you've at least sampled it and figured it out. And this seems to be one that I know you guys have been talking about since the release of this record. You guys have talked about this band. It seems like once a week. Maybe
less this album, but this band, the way that they like drone and use noise, it is just the sound that my anxiety makes. Mm-hmm. It like fits in with the feedback and the noise and the droning that my brain makes by default, just in my existence.
Well, all right. It's a cheerful one, right? We talked about that at the beginning. I think this is the first, my next pick. I think this is the first one that Dylan and I share.
I was going to say this is actually the next one I was going to talk about. So this is perfect.
Well done. All right.
Yep.
Civerous, Maze Envy.
Yes.
This is the sophomore record, $20 spin. It was released back in late March. This was like such a fun fucking listen.
Yep.
Again, not a band I was familiar with before. I knew they had released a few things prior to this record. This was their first for $20 spin.
Yes.
Who I, just having talked to Aiden this year, it seemed like I don't know the owner of $20 Spin's name off the top of my head, but I just know that he has like a affinity for like the underground. He's always got his ear to it. Yep. He's always just wants to work with bands that he is like a fan of. So he had like heard of this band, loved their previous output, but this record was so much fucking fun.
That label, just to go back on $20 Spin, is probably within the last, I'd say 6 or 7 years, become one of the most important modern heavy labels of all time, I think. Championing all the vast catalog it's got. I mean, we wouldn't be into Spirit Adrift without that label. We wouldn't have like Slime Lord without that label to listen to, and so on and so forth. And and I love how they release stuff too. Sometimes it's just like, here it is, get it now.
Yeah.
Whereas on other points, they hype it up so well. They give it a really good rollout. And with this record, that's what they did. Obviously, that tremendous album artwork on this, that is, basically it's giving you the description of the album, which is Maze Envy. It's a labyrinth. Listening to this album feels like you're going through a labyrinth. I mean, God, we... in our discussion with Aiden and in my review I did this year, talking about how there's a lot of Clive Barker elements to this record. There's a lot of, you name it, even some Del Toro influence to this as well, with Labyrinth and the uncomfortable silence. And it kind of feels like it's dizzying at certain points. And the production on this record is something to behold, because there's points where you can almost hear the faders moving in and out on the board.
Oh yeah, where
certain things are getting louder at certain points, and then they're pulled back, and then the tempo will flow a little bit for obvious reasons, but it feels dizzying, it feels suffocating in the best way possible. I mean, it was all recorded live to tape for the drums. There was no click.
Right. Andrew Solis, who is also put out a great record with Apparition as well as Nails this year. Had his hand all over the production of this record. But I really wanted to note as well, I mean, we kind of talked about this in our interview with Aiden, was that, doing the research, you kind of find that a lot of these guys come from different backgrounds musically. Not all, and that really not all, a lot of it in death metal. I mean, Lord Fowl, of course, big into that world, had been he seems kind of like the mastermind behind the lyrical themes and the concept for the record. But then you have some of the guitar players are like classically trained, like jazz musicians that went to school for this. Like Aiden seemed to have more of like a hardcore background. So really, like, this record can only be made by these guys collectively. Like there's just so much going on. It's not all just like, here's like these death metal or like doom or black metal parts. There's like these incredible string arrangements that are kind of scattered throughout the record. I love so much, like all the first part of this record is incredible. This would have been on my list even if I just got the last two songs, the title track as well as Gary on the Plummet. Those two songs are like incredible. They make this record for me 100%.
as you mentioned, the jazz influence, there's a shitload of chord progressions going on this record. And they're used in a way that, and in my review notes, it was authority through repetition. They're not only just playing the chord progression. You've got the root note of the chord, but the chords are changing throughout. So it may be like an add 9 or a minor or a sixth or whatever, but it keeps going and moving. It's propelling forward. It's maddening. It literally does kind of feel like Dante is realizing he cannot escape the pit. I'm glad you mentioned those 2 tracks. Those were my 2 tracks as well for this. Thematically, everything fits in so well as we dug into Lord Fowl's lyrics to kind of tie in with Swindle's most recent album. A lot of poetry, a lot of classic literature that Lord Fowl's into, which we came to realize. And his voice on this is really fitting. It's cavernous sounding, just ebbs and flows. There's a lot of range to it. But this is again one of those records that is hard to pull tracks from to listen to, because it does have to be listened to as one solid piece. And thankfully, it's only like 40 minutes long. Like, it's not a long record. And the songs don't feel long, even though some of them push almost 10 minutes, if not more. But fantastic record. Looking forward to whatever this band releases in the future. Also, if you haven't taken a listen to it or haven't taken a look at it, I did review this album earlier in the year. Please check that out.
My next record is Mannequin Pussy's I Got Heaven.
Hell yeah.
Based on Epitaph Records. This record is anger and horniness outside of a male's perspective. And that's a lot of fun. It is very horny. I know that like this band has always done like the soft and hard like dynamic changes. That's not new to this record, but when they do those dynamic changes, it makes the faster and more punky songs with screaming like actually seem angry. When you don't just have screaming constantly, you actually can like tell when someone is angry when they're screaming, and I love that. But I also obviously love albums that are constant screaming. So that's
yeah.
Like they got I Don't Know You, which is like one of the really slow and soft songs, and the last song on the album, Split Me Open, is one of the softer ones. Then there's like the really punky songs like Okay, and Aching. All the songs are pretty simple structure wise, and the parts they're playing also seem simple, but it's just really fun. The songs are really catchy and they're effectively written, and the like punky hardcore songs aren't just like, they're very well written hardcore songs. It's not just like thrown in there to be weird or niche or kitschy. Like they actually put a lot of thought into the punk songs that they wrote, and they wrote really good punk songs.
One random connection has nothing to do with the record that I always loved finding out the connection between this band and Baroness, that the drummer of Mannequin Pussy, whose name escapes me, used to play in King Diamond and maybe another cover band with Gina Gleason and Baroness. So they like grew up just like playing and listening to all that shit. Mannequin Pussy rules. I mean, I have been a fan of this band for a number of years as well, and gotten a chance to see them live. Missy's vocals and just songwriting capability is like second to none. Fucking love this band. Love this record. So definitely. All right. Is it my turn or your turn? Was it my turn, right?
It's your turn.
It's your turn.
I think we got another shared release here. Another one for $20 spin as well.
Yep. Man,
I fucking cannot say enough about this album. And I don't want to say it's like techie, because I don't think that necessarily fits it either. Because I think there's a lot of
it does to an extent. I think it does to an extent, but this isn't what many would consider tech death. It's not wank. It's not that band that we make fun of, that we have for years. Who knows? But you're right. Go ahead.
Atræ Bilis, Aumicide, sophomore record. God. It's an unrelenting record. there are moments to breathe, but from like the moment you turn it on till the end, it is like a sprint, like the entire time.
This record is so good. It's I could easily say if I were to pick like a top 5 albums, this would 100% be in it for this year, 150%. And there's been so much good shit that came out this year. But it blends tech, death, grind. There's atmosphere all over it. There's ambience all over it. The theme of this record is fucking great and very fitting to our time. It's, you know, I've had this conversation with you guys throughout the years where, you know, early on it was like, oh, Dylan likes this progressive style music or this technical style. I like precision. I think being technical is fine when it's used correctly. You have great technical bands, and then you have bands that are tech just for the sake of doing it. You know, I'll reference this most recent Nile record. Amazing, tremendous fucking record. Used it the way it needs to be done. It doesn't feel like it's overbearing. This album's in that same boat. Also, it's kind of a weird album to be released by 20 Buck Spin. They're not really known for releasing bands that sound like this. It's usually kind of an older school leaning band, or
right.
There's more of a doom element to it, or maybe it's more straightforward old school death. This has elements of slam. This has elements of brutal death metal, grind, like you fucking name it. It's got a shitload of groove on it too. My God.
I think I would equate it with like rubber band Riff. There's like a lot of bouncing and like the way that David plays guitar. There's just like such an elasticity to what he's doing on guitar. But also, I mean, that's not entirely all of it. I feel like there's a lot of range in his playing. And
absolutely.
What you said with like precise is huge. Like the playing is sharp. The tone is sharp too. Like you can hear all of the articulation. Like sometimes they're going like a million miles a fucking minute, but it doesn't just sound like,
you can hear everything.
You can hear everything. And it sticks with you too. There's like a lot of these like weird kind of like off-kiltered, like kind of dissonant guitar arrangements. But then there's like a ton of like melody and just like the fucking opening tracks, Protogenesis and Hell Simulation is an amazing opening to a record. Some of the chord choices in Hell Simulation as well. Like, I don't know if I want to say like pre-chorus or chorus. I think that structures aren't like, they're kind of atypical as well. They're not sticking to like one way or the other. But I mean, some of the chord choices in there, I mean, there's just so much like variation in riffing on a song like Inward to Abraxas, maybe my favorite track on the whole record, Kingdom of Cortisol. Just like noodly fucking riffs. Like, David is an amazing player. I know he's kind of like the mastermind behind a lot of the lyrical concept in that. You know who's like also no slouch on this fucking record is Luca on drums. I mean, Kingdom of Cortisol is an amazing song for that. Jordan, his vocals, the range of that fucking dude, crazy.
I mean, you're going from like brutal death metal vocals up to almost these shouty kind of post-rock vocals as well, which adds an element to this. It's a texture, right? Like when it comes to death metal, you really have to be able to explain to anybody that's not familiar with death metal what those vocals are, because that's the first thing they're going to hear that puts them off. And you have to explain it as it's another instrument. It's a texture. It's something that adds to this extreme form of music. And it's done very well on this record. This is, I'm glad you mentioned Kingdom of Cortisol. That almost ended up as one of my songs to like suggest on this because it's fucking great. I want to get back to kind of the grooves. A lot of the grooves, as you said, that kind of single note, very far beyond Driven-esque grooves. Like it's got a bounce to it. There's kind of a locked in, like it sounds like a power groove that's going on in this style of music, which is really difficult when you're flying that fucking fast.
Definitely hear that. I definitely heard like, and again, this is more of my Testament. I definitely heard like some Morbid Angel sounding kind of grooves on that.
100%.
You could be like, there's certainly some Cannibal elements on that. Like
absolutely.
My background, just what I picked out.
You're right. You're right with all of those. I hear every bit of that. The Morbid Angel leans into even some of the Gojira world as well. The tracks I kind of picked out that I think anybody should check out should be To Snuff the Spirit Guides, Excruciate Incarnate, which is the final track, which is arguably my favorite track on the record. I mean, there's so much texture and progression in that track alone. With it ends with this huge like chord progression that just continues to pound. That's almost post metal. What a fucking brilliant record. What a record that is as blinding fast as it is groovy, as it is catchy. It's a modern sounding record without sounding overbearing, without sounding overproduced. Christian Donaldson of Cryptopsy fame did a tremendous job on this record, as he did with the most prior Cryptopsy record as well. I argue to think this is the album of this band's career so far. I think that anything after this, it's going to be hard to follow up. Not to say that David can't, because I know he can, but this is the descriptor of this band's career to me so far. Like, Aumicide is a tremendous fucking record. Please, if you haven't, check out my review on that record as well.
Yeah, check out that. Check out, I mean, we literally interviewed David after the release of this record. We've since had David back for a Halloween episode. Would love to see this band live. I think listening to this band on record is like such a like enjoyable experience. I would love to see this performed live. 100%.
Oh my God. Just, yeah. I was thinking about that this morning before we hopped on. Like this album, just even listening to it as much as I did in preparation for all the time I spent with the album and the review, it still sounds so fucking fresh. Like, I can put it on and it's just like, oh, there's these riffs, there's this like transition. It's like, fuck, it's still so exciting to listen to it.
That rubber band.
Yep.
Sorry. Anyway, Swindle, your turn.
My next pick is Regional Justice Center's Freedom Sweet Freedom on Closed Casket Activities. This is a power violence band. This record is under 14 minutes long. I think it's like 13 and some change. It's short, fast, pissed, and heavy, which is all the things that power violence is. The quality of the record, the quality of the sound of the record is better than the last two. You can hear every instrument separately. Record starts with one of the Shelton brothers screaming just the word freedom, and it doesn't let up from there. The bass slowdown breaks in this record make me just angry, which is the point. I fucking love the line of the second song. The song is Moral Death Sentence. The line is, what's the statute of limitations on a mistake? Ian always does a great job of mixing his heavy influences on these records, like of course, power violence, but D-beat and hardcore. There's thrash parts on this record. I fucking am a sucker for a power violence record, and I hope Ian keeps making music like this. Use that Taco Bell money to keep making this shit.
I think Ian is such a, I would say, prolific songwriter. I mean, yeah, able to kind of have his foot in both worlds of like making stuff that maybe sounds more akin to like Modest Mouse and like kind of indie rock type stuff. But, you know, I wouldn't have known about Military Gun had it not been for like Regional Justice Center. And I mean, there's I forget the name of the band. I think it's like
Sex with a Terrorist.
Maybe is it the one where he recorded an album when he just did it on like an iPhone?
It's Sex with a Terrorist is the name of that band.
Right.
SWAT.
Yeah. I love this band. I'd been anticipating this record since the last one came out. So many great riffs. And you can just, I think on the vinyl release, you can just listen. It's on both sides of the record. Like they just that shit on both sides, if I'm not mistaken. It's so great. Yeah, this is definitely a highlight for me this year as well. It's a fun listen. Ian, keep making fucking heavy fast shit for sure. So my next pick is also a Swindle pick. I'm pretty sure. This will never not be a highlight for me, and I'm sure for us for the year, getting to talk to one of our favorite fucking bands ever. But Thou put out a record this year, Umbilical. out on Sacred Bones Records. It was dropped in May. It'd been a while. As we discussed in our deep dive of this band this year, that since they'd released a full length Magus back in 2018, I mean, we were, definitely very fortunate enough to see some collaborations with different bands like The Body, Emma Ruth Rundle, and Mizmor. We finally got a full length record. We got to talk to them about it, so you can check that episode out. But I fucking love this record. I knew I was going to love this record from the first single. I think it's like, they kind of talk about this, but you can definitely hear a lot of like the sounds from the earlier records that we got into, maybe like the first few albums, but somehow sounds more aggressive and like just fucking meaner than some of those records. Definitely feels like when you see the first time I saw the band live, I definitely like was kind of brought back into that very small room and seeing it. It's just very raw, and there's a lot more industrial and electronic influences on this record, and that might be partly due to their touring with like Uniform and then writing with Uniform. I believe that some of those members receive a writing credit. They're on the record, but I think it's great. Swindle, what do you think about Umbilical?
Hated it. It sounds like some of the stuff they put out on some of the splits and EPs. The first Narcissus Prayer, the first song sounds like a fucking hardcore band in a weird way. When I first listened to the song Emotional Terrorist, the bass in the beginning of that song just like stopped fucking time. It was wild. And they're like the single I Feel Nothing When You Cry and The Promise, those are just kind of like almost sing-alongs like you expect, like when you see Bane or any other 90s hardcore band, just to like you expect people to just pile on and fucking sing along to those. And much like Big Brave, the drone at the end of House of Ideas just like blends in with the anxiety that I just feel every day, all the time. When I hear House of Ideas, it's just like, it's like being at home.
Yeah, I mean, they push everything. I mean, this band is certainly no stranger to like just like big sounding production. But the tone of this record is noticeably different than the previous records. It's like got this very unique distortion and just kind of like even the vocals like are just distorted a little bit.
Everything's pushed in the red.
Yeah, it is just a loud, in your face record. You mentioned Emotional Terrorist. That's like definitely one I had on here as my favorite. Lonely Vigil. I know you listed I Return As Chained and Bound to You. Fucking amazing track. The Promise. I don't think there's really a bad song on this record. It was a nice surprise. I didn't know, like, having this trilogy of albums kind of like behind them, where are you going to go next? And they fucking knocked it out of the park. I think it's a great record.
Shorter, more direct, for sure. And when it comes to kind of like a Doom adjacent band that they are, getting that from time to time is really nice. Especially with the two albums that preceded it, which are these very grand, like monumental sounding records, right? And going into something that's, we're talking about an album that's like 50 minutes and it's a short record. And it hit me as a little bit more direct. I am a big fan of those first three records that they did, for sure. And hearing this was just like, okay, it has that 90s hair on it, kind of like that in utero kind of like dread and distortion that's all kind of around it, and the presence of it is all there. And the songwriting on it is very, Swindle hit the nail on the head. It feels like a lot of maybe like the compilation stuff that they put out. It feels like a comp that's more consistent and thematically all tied in. You got a song like The Promise, which is a really melodic track, surprisingly, has that really catchy chorus in it. But what a brutalizing fucking record that this thing is. We're all big fans of bands from that area of the country. There's something down there. There's something in the water. I arguably was not as familiar with this band until we did the deep dive, really, just from like filtration throughout the years from you guys and getting a bigger understanding and an appreciation for this band of what they've done and their output and how they put it out. They're releasing material like a hardcore band, but they're releasing material that seems more like a heavy metal band in that sense, like a sludge band or something. Great record, fun record. Definitely check out that review as well for that. We were able to kind of tie in a whole thou month, it seemed.
Yeah.
Though that group of folks is really going to be scared to see you guys in the next few weeks.
Yeah, we're going to be...
yeah, baby.
They're going to be going on tour this winter. They're going to be hitting up a handful of dates in the U.S. We're definitely going to be at the Nashville and Louisville shows, it seems. And then they're also going to Europe in the spring. So if you're around, you can do that. Yeah.
That fucking road burn looks wild.
Yeah.
Like it's thou fucking Big Brave. Hers Collective is playing. What is Emily?
Oh, Emily McWilliams?
Isn't her project?
Silver Godling.
Yeah, Silver Godling's fucking playing. It's wild.
Yeah, that's a festival bucket list forever. Like I hope to make it over there one of these days. It just seems like such a, I don't know, a great performances that they curate over there. So yeah, if you're around, check it out. And then check out this record, of course, as well.
Austin brought up in his iFlies review that it's the most straightforward album probably on his list this year. Swindle brought it up in his Big Brave release this year that it's the anti-riff and all of this. Well, I have an album that is the shortest fucking thing I've got on my list. Probably the most straightforward release I've done and probably the most like direct lyrical content of any record I have on here. I'm talking the new fucking release from Nails with Every Bridge Burning. 18 minutes long. Fuck you means fuck you. Todd is mad as hell and he's yelling about it. This is one of the most visceral fucking bands I've ever heard. And this release is the perfect, it seems to me the perfect representation of what this band actually is. It's been quite some time since they released their album, You'll Never Be One of Us. And man, they released a fucking heavy record. Every song on this thing just screams with vitriol and anger. There's no cutting corners here. Todd is writing lyrics straight from his brain, straight to the paper. The line in particular from the song, Give Me the Painkiller, Let Me Do My Goddamn Thing, it just sticks out so much to me. It's like, all right, it speaks on letting somebody be themselves. It speaks on, not having somebody, being under somebody's thumb. What a great, loud, aggressive fucking record. With Todd's prior work and Terror and Carry On, like this band just trumps all of that shit. I'm sorry. Like Nails being this blend of death, grind, power, violence, and even classical heavy metal on like classic heavy metal on this release. It's probably not as straightforward of a power violence record as maybe the Regional Justice Center record is, but it is definitely a representation of all the things I like about extreme music. It's got guitar harmonies. It's got fast-paced fucking drums on it. I mean, the track Give Me the Painkiller, which I mentioned before, it just opens up with a Judas Priest lick. It's just all over the song. I mean, it's got one of the best riffs I've heard in the last many years with the track Lacking the Ability to Process Empathy. Just fucking all over it. I got a chance to see this band live this year. And they bulldoze the fucking room. I don't know how a band like this can play for 50 minutes like they did, but I don't know how there's anybody left. Like the floor was just a pit at that point. What a fucking record. The production on this record just screams. It's a Kurt Ballou production. The band recorded it during Halloween in Salem, Massachusetts. So like just Nails is out and about, like all these motherfuckers dressed up. The artwork was done by Rest himself, Jeff Whitehead of Leviathan. So it's a very abrasive looking piece of art as well. It's that devil head, I believe. Man, what a great fucking record. It's got thrash elements. Gary Holt would be proud of this fucking record if he wrote it. Man, that's really all I got to say on this fucking record. I did a review of it this year. If you have a chance to check this band out, please listen to it. If you haven't, do it. Listen to the whole band's fucking catalog. It's an hour long. Just do it. Like that's less time than a shitty fucking movie at the movies.
I don't think they have a bad record. I love all of them. This record particular, I think the last song was probably my favorite. There's a riff in that fucking song that is just like, I mean, it just go through the whole record and then end on like the riff for me.
Great fucking record.
Yeah. This one's weird. I'll be honest with you. This one's great. I fucking love this record. It is dissonant. It is very dense. It is not like a lot of stuff I had listened to before. I know there is a entire world of like dissonant sounding death metal and black metal. This band was turned on to me by our good friend Dan Vita and Selenoplexia by their self-titled record from a couple years back. Shout out Selenoplexia. Shout out Dan. But Defacement is like so insane. The record that just came out this year, Duality, it's their third. It is out now on Unorthodox Emanations. I believe it's kind of like tied in with the label Avant-Garde music as well, some Italian labels. But this shit's fucking crazy. It is fast. Like I said, it's very dense. There is just a lot going on musically. I mean, some of the guitar layers, I mean, you could have like a bunch of riffs and then there's just like, you could pick out some pieces that are just adding texture in the back. Like, I feel like this record at times is just as much of like a shoegaze record as it is like some like fucking black metal and death metal. I really love, like, it's a very challenging record. Like you'll get, you know, a song that's like Burden that's like almost 10 minutes long. And then they're all kind of split up with these like dark ambient electronic pieces as well that really, I think, help break up the record nicely. They're very, very unique sounding. So that's like a really, I thought like Hypoglossal is like a really favorite track of mine on the record. I would say the title track, which ends the record, it's like 16 minutes long. That was their single that they released for the record. It does not feel like a slog. Listen to this record. I mean, I love everything about it. I would love to know what some of the effects that were used on this. I mean, it really feels like they kind of went through they scrutinized over every little thing on this record. There was no stone left unturned. There was no amount of space that wasn't filled with this band. Definitely check it out. They're also going to be going on some tours and some shows. They got a tour or a show in Athens, rather, in Greece, February 21st. They are also going to be embarking on a European tour this May with Sidrian, who also released another incredible record, Spilling the Astral Chalice. I saw that Dave Davidson from Revocation also put that on his end of the year list as well. So those records alone, I think you could check out and it would be great. But yeah, Defacement, Duality, awesome record.
Album has no room for air. Like it is like it's suffocating.
Anxious.
It's tense, it's anxious, it's suffocating, anxiety ridden. What a weird fucking record too, right? Like just extremely experimental in a sense, without seeming like they're reaching, without it seeming like they're just cramming shit in to cram shit in. And and that can be difficult for bands that are writing tracks that are 16 minutes in length. And this seems like one of those bands too that isn't writing a song just to write a 16-minute song. They're just like, wait, this part makes sense. Let's keep adding to it. Let's keep expanding upon it. What a weird record. I believe Total Dissonance Worship helped release this album as well. Did the vinyl releasing in the States, which released our friends in Pelagius and their EP, their first release, self-titled, which was another album you should check out, another release that you should definitely check out.
Definitely kind of in this vein as well.
Yep.
I mean,
a lot of immolation worship on there.
Yeah, I hear Portal. I hear some Orbit Angel stuff on here, maybe some Imperial Triumphant. I've heard a lot of people throw Ulcerate around. I'm not as familiar with that band as you are, but with all that said, I mean, it's a great fucking record. I really enjoyed it.
Is it me again?
All right, Dill.
Me again, Margaret. My next album is the newest release from Tribulation, Sub Rosa in Æternum, released through Century Media Records at the 1st of November. They actually released it the day after Halloween, which is remarkable because, man, they almost hit the mark with this record. What a fun and great release from a band that I've been following for many years now. I've been following them since The Children of the Night in 2015. Obviously, you can check out our prior review of Down Below, which is a fantastic album as well. But this album differs quite a bit from that release. This band has kind of been going in this territory for many years. The territory I'm describing is they're getting more into like arena rock of the 1980s and goth rock of the 1980s as well. I would say this is comparable to like The Cult and their Sonic Temple release. You've got a lot of like goth releases, which I am a dum-dum when it comes to that music. I would say like you've got some Bauhaus in there, Sisters of Mercy, bands of that category. But then you've also still got the elements of this. You've also got the elements that this band is most known for, which is that blackened kind of classic rock sounding stuff. You know, almost like Thin Lizzy listened to a lot of Emperor or something like that. You know, it's still Tribulation nonetheless. You still get every element of what the band is known for in this release. It's a solid fucking release, almost a refresher for the band too. I think between Down Below and Where the Gloom Knows No Sound, you know, a lot of those two records sounded very similar. The band went through a bit of a lineup change post Where the Gloom Knows No Sound. They lost their primary guitarist, whose name is slipping me, and they had a new member join as well. They released the Hamartia EP a couple years back that gave us a little bit of a sampler of what we're getting with this album. But man, what a great release to come out right around Halloween. You know, the singles that were released were like Tainted Sky, Saturn, Coming Down, which are two completely different sounding tracks, but also have a lot of the same overarching themes in it. You have these great kind of clean baritone goth vocals coming through on this record a lot more, but you've still got that rasp, that kind of grit from those prior albums. But like this release, if you're a fan of anything this band has done, this album has it. This is also a very just great polished sounding record. All the tracks flow seamlessly. It's relatively short. It's a fun fucking listen, and I hope it becomes kind of a Halloween album for everybody through on out. But the tracks that I picked for this that really stuck out to me were Tainted Skies and Drink the Love of God. Just those are the two tracks to me that really describe the album the best.
My next album is another album from Sacred Bones Records. It is Uniform's American Standard. And before I get into this, talking about this album, it bears mentioning that the name of the album is American Standard because that is a company that makes toilets. And this record is about the eating disorder of the vocalist. And he saw this name of this toilet company a lot because of his eating disorder. That is worth mentioning because the album starts off with a very harrowing chant about the vocalist seeing themselves in the mirror. There are a lot of lyrics, but it is essentially like, there's meat on my face, it hangs off my face. There's meat on my waist, it hangs off my waist. This can't be me. Reeks like I reek, looks like I look. And the album does not feel better for the rest of the fucking album. It just stays in the same feeling. After this chant, some kind of like guttural sound starts playing, and it makes it feel even worse, even nastier than just the chant. And then shortly after that, like layers and layers and layers of instruments come in. And I wouldn't describe the part as a drone, but it definitely drones. Plays the same part over and over again. This song is 20 minutes fucking long, but it's the highlight of the record. It never feels like a slog. It never feels like they've gone on too long. And the song is only like 3 fucking parts. the end of the song kind of goes into like maybe a part that I would describe as Death Heaven like. It's kind of like it has the kind of like the offbeat blast, kind of like a new American black metal style, but with all these instruments layered on each other. There's only 3 other songs on the album. This is not a prayer. It's very much driven by the rhythm of the drums. The phrase, I gotta wish, is one that he says over and over again in that song, and it will get stuck in your head. Clemency, the 3rd track, has a big fucking riff with bends, like completely sounds different than the rest of the record. It sounds like a fucking Pantera riff almost. And then the final track, Permanent Embrace, takes a second to get into, but once it does, it kind of is almost like symphonic black metal with like again the like offbeat snare, blast beat, and there's keys all over that song, like keyboards all over that song. It's a wild fucking listen, and again, like trigger warning if you have an eating disorder, this album does not fucking feel good, but it is a great album. It's my favorite Uniform album. It's wonderful.
I am a huge fan of Full Hell, and they put out a great record this year, but I definitely wanted to mention this. I don't want to call it an offshoot project because I feel like they all hold their own merits, but members of Full of Hell, both current and previous, as well as some members of Jarhead Fertilizer. This is like a 3-piece, maybe they're a 2-piece live. I'm not exactly sure. Everybody is doing their own thing, but I wanted to talk about Collapsed Skull and their debut record, Your Father's Rage Evaporated in the Sun, which came out on Closed Casket Activities in September. We talked about $20 Spin being an important label. I would also argue that Closed Casket Activities, and for a long time, has been a very, very big, important piece of underground music, both in hardcore and just metal and all sorts of things like that. So Closed Casket put out a 7-inch from this band, maybe like a couple years ago, called Eternity Maze. Handful of songs, fucking loved it. I think it was like recorded, mixed, and mastered by Arthur Rizk, who I'll talk about in a little while as well. He had his hand on a bunch of albums this year and past that people should definitely check out. That was kind of a ram, like, oh, hey, love Full Hell, I got to check this band out. And I love that 7-inch. Then to hear that they had like a proper full length coming out as well, very stoked. And it is probably the most unique, one of the most unique records that I've listened to this year. I mean, it combines elements of grind, power violence, hardcore, with these like chopped and screwed hip hop samples and like all of these audio clips. I mean, we have 22 tracks, around like 30 or so minutes long. It's incredible. It's just vocals, bass, and drums. And then there's like a lot of the sampling, as I mentioned, but it's a filthy record. It's definitely a bleak record, I think, in that, it talks about, you'll definitely need to open up the lyric sheet to maybe understand what Dylan is saying, just because he is, as with any of his other projects, he delivers every lyric with such intensity and like, I feel like he's like shredding his vocal cords every time he, picks up a mic. But with the samples, you definitely get elements of like the war on drugs and like private prisons and just, the police, just the police force and everything like that. I mean, there's just where they're able to find all of these audio clips and wherever they're pulling from. They do a really great job of setting the narrative of the record on each song. I definitely do not come from the hip hop world, but I fucking love this record. I think, and then also equally, when you pre-ordered, I think, certain copies of the record, they actually also put out like this companion mixtape that was produced by the band that features like a bunch of underground hip hop and rap artists as well, that I would definitely recommend checking out. But I fucking love Opioid Scourge, Sniping Pigs, Throne of Oppression. Probably my favorite track would be Silent Breath, just because there's like a really cool. It opens with like the sampling bit, and then like the piano part in that is great, and then it just cuts like right into just absolute fucking chaos. Great fucking record. I love this record.
They fucking sample Woody Guthrie.
Yeah, they did.
I fucking love that. I was not expecting when I listened to that album to hear a fucking Woody Guthrie sample in there.
Yeah.
Very political shit. Very political.
Yeah. I mean, like, if you look at Opioid Scourge, like one of the first tracks of the record, it says, numb me, end me, put me in a cage. Like, and then ends with like the, sampling a bit, talking about like just, the war on drugs. And I would say this would definitely make my top 5 for the year for sure. Like I loved it so much, and I would love to see this band live. I can't wait to see what they do next.
All right. Tying in with the Close Casket Activities record label, my next release is The Nothing That Is from New Jersey's own Fit for an Autopsy, released through Nuclear Blast Records on October 25th, right before Halloween. Been waiting for this for quite some time. This is arguably one of the most important bands to me in the last 10 years or so. I discovered this band in 2020, kind of when my love and or taste for heavy music was probably at a lull, just because I had started to fall in and only listen to the stuff that I'd grown up with and listen to stuff I'd only heard before. And, that's not where I ever wanted to be. I always wanted to find new shit, and everything new to me at the time maybe just fell on deaf ears. But this band and their 2019 release, The Sea of Tragic Beast, really helped change that a lot. I had heard this band in their early era a bit and didn't really think much of it. Kind of had fallen out of love of the deathcore genre or subgenre, and not giving this band the time of day to realize that they had a completely different take on it. This is probably the best deathcore band that's existed. I'm sorry. They use the breakdown the way that it could be used without overusing it. They're writing riffs and songs and using the breakdown just as a bridge portion, which I do like. Bands can overdo it. That's their prerogative. There are a lot of people that like that, but I don't. And this band is more than meets the eye, I think, in every facet. This album is equal parts political. It's equal parts self-reflective. You have songs that touch on the Middle East, what's going on in the Middle East right now with Red Horizon. You have songs that are touching on maybe some of the right-leaning situations with Weaker Wolves, as well as many things in between. But you've also got arguably one of the best produced kind of modern records of the last few years too, with Will Putney's production job on this record. Not only is he producing this record, he is also the primary songwriter of this band. Although he does not tour with them, play live with them, he does have 2 equal guitar partners of this band with Pat and Tim, who are absolute shredders. This album is loaded with fucking solos all over it. There are elements on this record that are drawing influence from At the Gates, Darkest Hour, Lamb of God, who Joe Bad, the vocalist, has filled in for a few times. You've got some of the Pantera influence going on. Fit for an Autopsy does this. They have this very signature way of writing a riff that sounds like an elephant marching riff. It's very much a just pounding, pummeling kind of riff structure to it. But I mean, this album is so much more. It is one of the best modern sounding records I've heard in quite some time. Contemporaries such as Darkest Hour released a great record this year as well, but this one just hits all the buttons I want it to hit. I also did a review of this record that I really get to dig a little bit deeper in on it. But the 2 tracks on this album that I really want to bring up are Weaker Wolves and Lurch. If you want heavy, those 2 tracks are full of it.
Before I directly get into my next pick, the first kind of underground heavy album I ever listened to was The Silent Circus by Between the Buried and Me, and I fucking loved that album, and I loved that listen because I had no fucking idea where any of those songs were going to go to. like what the next part was going to be. It was just a complete fucking surprise. And my next pick is very much the same way. Ministerial Cafeteria by Thirdface. This album came out on Exploding in Sound Records. This album is fucking crazy. It's wild. So many of the songs have so many fucking parts, and you have no idea what's gonna come next. I was hooked on this album from the first song, from Mantras. There's like 2 or 3 riffs on that song that I don't even have words to describe the fucking riff. There are other songs like Sour or Artifact of Darkness that have a lot less parts, but they change the parts of the song in a way that still really keep the fucking album moving and keep it very fucking interesting. This album doesn't sound like Between the Buried and Me. It's fucking hardcore punk. It's very fucking chaotic, and that is the thing. Like when we talked about Ampere, I mentioned it. That is the thing that drew me into hardcore and punk, was just like complete fucking chaos, complete fucking anarchy. You have no idea where this is gonna head, where this is gonna go. This album really does that in the best way. And Shibby, his drum performance on this album is fucking insane.
Yeah.
Like, what a great drummer.
Yeah. Great, like, he just can't be stopped. Great guitarist, great drummer. Did he produce this record? Did he record it?
I don't know who recorded it, but I do know who mastered it, and it's our boy James Plotkin from Thou fame. He mastered it.
Yeah. What's the name of his band again? It's Canate.
Conate.
Yeah.
And OLD, Old, is his other band.
Right. Yeah. Great fucking band. Nashville.
It's
Nashville's own.
Great record. And also the vocalist Catherine Works is part owner of
Dark Matter.
Venue. Dark Matter, yeah. So go to Dark Matter if you're in the area.
On the other side of the spectrum here, I have definitely seen this album listed on a lot of end of the year lists, everywhere from like Rolling Stone to Decibel to whatever. Gonna be no different here. I fucking loved Blood Incantation's Absolute Elsewhere. It's their 3rd record. Century Media. It was released in October. Loved Aliens for sure. No different. The nerds are in full effect here, but they're good nerds. We love some good nerds. I love the previous releases. I mean, shit, I would put like Time Wave Zero on like to go to sleep, basically. I just find it very relaxing and kind of get the zone out. They got riffs for sure. The riffs are present here, but it's not just death metal. I mean, I feel like I'll definitely listen to this and hear like, death and like maybe some symbolic influence. But then there's like some fucking just wild proggy shit from like the 70s and 80s. I think the one thing that has definitely come up, and it definitely came up upon my first listen to it, Pink Floyd. There's definitely some Pink Floyd on this record for sure. Even the soloing is like David Gilmour shit to me. That's just how I interpreted it. I mean, almost every song, especially on like the back half of the record, will have like some of these like proggy, like kind of spacey parts. The first part of the record, the Stargate, also does as well. I mean, the instrumental with literally someone from Tangerine Dream is such a highlight of the fucking record for me. But I mean, there's always room for riffs on this record. I really am interested to watch the documentary. They've been releasing it in parts, different aspects of like how the record was put together. They've been putting that out on their YouTube page, so I'm definitely looking forward to that. The first part of the record also has a fucking amazing music video that was produced for it. Definitely check that out. It's super, super cool, but
20 minutes long.
It's 20 minutes long, but again, as with many of the records we've talked about who have like longer tracks, or I mean, this definitely has parts to kind of break it up, but like it doesn't feel like
it's quick listen.
It's you just breeze. I mean, it's only like what 40 odd minutes, but it never feels like it's dragging its feet. There's just always something happening. There's always something very creative and unique. I feel like this band is definitely made of people who just love music. Not only does that show on the record, but it shows in like some of their listening habits and some of the people they'll have on tour. If you were, lucky enough to catch them on this US run, they had fucking Midwife open for them, which one of my favorite records from this year, No Depression in Heaven, great record. So they'll just put out people that, bring out people they love. I mean, they're going on a European tour with like a Japanese krautrock band. I'm sure they just love that music. I love this record. I'm sure a lot of people did. Sounds great too. Again, Arthur Risk. I don't know if I hope that's how you pronounce the name, but he produced, engineered, mixed, and mastered the whole fucking thing. A great sounding record, great songs. Definitely, I mean, probably the best thing the band's done at this point.
I would 100% agree to that statement. It's hard to see that a band that started out like with the Starspawn release to turn into this band. Obviously some of the members of this band are in Spectral Voice as well, which is more Death Doom centric for sure. That album is quite enjoyable, but feels a lot more claustrophobic than this album does. This album is very lush, has all these great sounds to it, has these very progressive leaning parts, obviously the Pink Floyd influence is there 100%. The Tangerine Dream influence is there with like Time Wave Zero. I got a lot of Gentle Giant because I grew up, when I was in my teens, I was listening to a lot of Gentle Giant, King Crimson, stuff like that. And like, I hear a lot of that in there. What I did like about this release is when they did release it digitally, they released the A side, then they released the B side, like on separate weeks. And I thought that was such a cool concept because then it's like, it's essentially two kind of EPs being combined as a full length, right? Because then you could actually see the difference in it. And sometimes when you listen to something like this in full, things might go by the wayside, right? I did enjoy how that was released. And then when you did get to see the full production, it just felt like a story, like moving through the chapters and everything.
It would have been really hard to put out like a single for this, I think.
Yeah.
So you'd almost have to just be like, here's the first part. You get a fucking great like short film essentially with the first half of the record. Job well done. I'm really looking forward to checking out that documentary and diving more into the kind of backstory of the record itself.
That's one of the there are like three records that all three of us almost unanimously had on our list. And
right.
Sheer Mag was one, and this was one of them. Well, what a great record.
Yeah, I was like, when you had it in your like honorable mentions or whatever we're calling it, I was kind of like surprised, but you said you listened to it just like on a drive or something one day, or you're just chilling?
I was working, listen to it. Yeah.
And you just, because you're not, I mean, I don't think I would be wrong to say that you're not typically like a death metal guy, but like I definitely could hear some of the other stuff that you would probably be into for sure.
Right. Yeah. I think every now and then talent shines through like the parts that you don't like. Like there are people that are like so fucking good at what they do that even if you traditionally don't like what they do, you'll like them because they're so good at it.
And speaking of bands that are really fucking good at what they fucking do and being off the wall, and one of the weirdest releases I've heard in quite some time, the new Defeated Sanity record, Chronicles of Lunacy. This is probably the last week that album releases came out before they stopped getting noticed. Typically, it's that December and January month just get completely ignored. And I'd been waiting for this thing for so long. Just waiting and waiting. I knew they were in the studio. I knew when the recording was done. The album was produced by Colin Marston at the God, hold on, I've got it here because I found out much later that the name of his studio is a Lord of the Rings thing. But it was produced by Colin. We just talked about Blood Incantation. It was mixed. It was produced, mixed, and mastered by Colin Marston of the Minigroth, the Thousand Cave Studio. R.I.P. Colin is currently in the midst of finding a new studio, but Colin is known for his production duties on tons of records. I believe the last release that he produced is going to be the forthcoming Imperial Triumphant release, which will be fucking bonkers. But we're not talking about that. We're talking about Defeated Sanity. Snuck in at the last bit of the year. It's one of the wildest fucking things I've heard. This band does two things really well. They do this kind of blending. They do this blending of like brutal slam influenced technical death metal with all these kind of caveman parts to it, as well as these kind of jazz, almost classically influenced technical death metal parts as well. And they've done releases where they've split that and done two EPs together, where one is one way and one is the other way, kind of a yin and yang. This album is the best representation, I think, of all of those sounds combined into one. The songwriting is stop on a dime craziness. I mean, you've got parts that just are going to be in 4/4 for a couple measures, and then it goes off to 7/4, 11/16. It just fucking goes off on these tangents, all while feeling completely organic. Also while feeling like one cohesive performance the entire time. The musicianship of this band is fucking wild. The guitars kind of take a back seat on this record. The bass and drums are just astounding on this. Lily Gruber, who is the drummer of this band, is also the primary songwriter. He's been in this band since he was like 13 years old. The drumming on this album is jazz influenced. There's all these different fills and these kind of breaks with the drums. The bass, Jacob Schmidt, who also played on another great death metal release this year with the new Malignancy album, is all over this fucking record. He's got points that he's playing counterpoint melodies. He's doing these points that stick out all over the record. There's a little bit of even like there's a little bit of like cryptopsy elements there with some of the popping and slapping not being overutilized on this album as well. It's just a bonkers fucking record. It's intense. The vocals sound just maniacal. The album itself is almost depraved sounding with how just wild and intense it is. If anybody's into like technical or brutal death metal, there's not really a band that does it too much better than this band. And again, another really standout performance from the band. A couple tracks that really stick out to me for this one is A Patriarchy Perverse and Condemned to Vascular Famine. Patriarchy Perverse was co-written by Jacob Schmidt and Lily Gruber, so you get the bass and drums just in the forefront on that track. Wild fucking release, and it snuck in at the very last minute.
My next pick is Plagues Upon Plagues by SECT. This was released by Southern Lord Recordings. I have never listened to SECT's albums before this one. And I'm very thankful to have found, through Austin, found this band because we did a fucking Cursed episode. This record feels bad. like fucking life, like 2024. This record feels terrible. Fucking thing that I love. A quote from Chris, the vocalist, that I love was, if hardcore music is about emotional honesty, then I don't see how anyone in hardcore could make a record that isn't sad right now. And he fucking took that to heart. This doesn't necessarily sound like anything Cursed recorded, but it very much sounds like a direction that band could have gone. I wouldn't say that it's a hardcore record. It's very fucking slow.
Yep.
It's
sludgy almost.
Yeah, it's sludgy. It sounds mean, but also it sounds melancholy. You are not going to feel good when you fucking listen to this album. The songs No Uncertain Terms, The Lovers of Life, and Six Black Lines are just complete punches in the gut if you listen to the lyrics. I fucking love this album. feeling bad is is a big point of the music that I listen to makes me feel bad, and this album fucking does that, and I fucking love it.
I love it. We're really selling these records. Hey, listen to this. You will feel terrible. But no, yeah, it's a great fucking record. Chris is an amazing lyricist for sure.
Yeah. I mean, the thing that got me into punk was like, it seemed like a genre of music where people were saying things that I thought were important to say. And this album, Chris is saying some fucking shit that feels important to say right now.
Hell yeah.
Do you think Luigi listened to this record?
I think if he had, he might not have even felt like going out to get that guy. He just stayed at home.
Let me close the blinds. Speaking of gut punches, my next record, Querencia, Immortal Bird, Chicago's own. I'm just gonna call this band a metal band because I don't think you can really lock them under one thing, nor should you. There is a ton of variation within this band's catalog, and it is not variation for variation's sake. They just write what serves the song, and I definitely feel like you get that on this record. I was a huge fan of Thrive on Neglect, which was I believe their first record for $20 spin, their sophomore record, and that record is certainly Riff City, but this is Riff City as well. You get it just the way it flows into like a hardcore part, or like here's some black metal arrangements or death metal kind of, there's really just so much going on here. There really isn't much reprieve. I feel like it's kind of a sprint all the way through, kind of like we mentioned with the Atræ Bilis record. It's like it almost starts out. There's a song in the beginning, I should mention, Bioluminescent Toxins. That's a fucking amazing song that has like kind of this very angelic break, and it has some like clean vocals that Ray is doing. But that's real. I mean, there might be like one other part, but I feel like it is pretty much just like unrelenting the entire way through. I think, but they still find other ways to explore it. I mean, like I mentioned, you have the clean vocals. I think there's some keys on this record. I believe Ray plays a glockenspiel at one point on the record. They recorded this as a 3-piece, so I feel like there was some sharing of the kind of bass duties. It doesn't feel like it lost anything. No, disrespect to the previous bass player, but I just feel like the band came in and they really found a way to just fill out and write these songs very, very well. Actually, I know Kaon from Yautja and Wretched Blessing, which is Ray from Immortal Bird and Kaon's other project that came out with another favorite release of this year, the Wretched Blessing self-titled EP. Definitely check that out. But the riffing style is definitely a highlight of this. I feel like it's super sharp. I love the fucking guitar tone on this record. It sounds great. Pete Grossman, Chicago artist and also producer. He recorded, mixed, and engineered this record. Brad Boatwright mastered it. I just some of the off-kiltered kind of, like, I don't know how you would call it. It just feels like just so noodly and kind of wonky sounding in parts. But then there's like, here's just like the most insane thrash metal riff, like tried and true thing. I don't know. It's a great record. Some of my favorite tracks on there here: Propagandize, Synthetic Alliances, and Contrarian Companions. Yeah, I mean, I love this band. I got to see them perform these songs live with Mother of Graves, who also put out a crazy, amazing record this year. John and I went. John Wooten Photo. Definitely give him a follow. He got to capture some of that event. But amazing performance live. I don't know if they will be doing anything for quite some time if maybe some other members are focusing on other projects. But I'm so happy to have had the experience of seeing this band live and also getting this record this year. It was a huge highlight.
Yeah, I enjoyed this record more than the prior record. But I also wanted to bring up too that this is another $20 spin release.
Yeah, I mean, I got like at least 1, 2. Yeah, this is like a 3 or 4 for my list. I think it's So I mean,
3. Yep.
Yeah, 3 releases. How many do you have on yours?
You know what? I think it's 1. I have 2.
Yeah. So I mean, but like for all the things that came out this year, for to have like 2 or 3 releases on our lists and stuff like that, like that's saying
great label.
I think. Yeah,
great label. Sure. Guess it's me. So if there was a top 5, this record I'm about to describe would be Into It. I am from Arkansas. There's kind of a descriptor of, I think Nate Garrett once said in an interview, you don't necessarily leave, you get out. And I take that, but I also have a respect for bands that come from there to be able to write the type of music that bands write while living there, because I did not have the greatest experience living there in my teen years. And maybe these guys did, maybe they didn't. But talking about Pallbearer's Mind Burns Alive, one of my favorite releases this year, absolute top tier. I have had the chance to see this band multiple times, and each time is kind of met with a different emotion. I got to see them on the release date of this album. And I believe Murfreesboro, Tennessee, and man, was it, they played this whole record, front to back, basically. And it's an emotionally heavy record. I feel like it reinvigorated the band a little bit. The prior album, was really good, but it felt like maybe there's some disconnect there. It was also released at the height of the pandemic. Weird thing about this record, though, is some of these songs were written concurrently with that release. So some of these songs have been gestating for quite some time. But this album is definitely more in line with some of their post-rock influences, their synth-driven influences, their progressive influences. Talk, Low, Yes, bands of that styling. There's a very... this album hit a very emotional and vulnerable chord for me because it has a lot to do with isolation, past trauma, mental illness. And I think that comes with a very heavy burden, to deal with that and walk around with that for quite a bit of your life. And this album just hit at a very perfect moment. It still draws from the band's like doom, heavy rock, stoner rock influences, southern rock influences as well, but it is a much more refined. It's used in different elements. This band isn't necessarily known for playing extremely high gain amps. They let the tuning and the volume do the work when it comes to that, but it also proves too that you don't necessarily have to have the gain dimed out to write one of the heaviest releases of the year, and you also don't have to scream your head off to write the heaviest release of the year, although there are many albums that do that and do it very well. This album is just a fucking journey, from start to finish. It's a little on the longer side. This band is prone to write a little bit lengthier songs, but it doesn't feel like a chore. The lyrics in this are very, very bleak. They're very dry. Read into that. If you're feeling blue, if you're feeling rough about yourself, if you're feeling like nobody out there feels the same way you do, this record proves that there are. And the great thing about this record is it feels like a release. It doesn't feel like, oh, I'm going further. It feels like there is kind of a light at the end of the tunnel. Great album. Where the Light Fades, the opening lick to that song is stuck in my head all the time, every day. I hear it. That's a track I would suggest. And then Endless Place, which is the final track on the record. I mean, Jesus, what a record. What a great bunch of dudes too. Like, you see them in interviews, they're all genuine. They're really excited about what they're doing. It's kind of nice to have a band like this that is from Arkansas, still rooted in Arkansas. I mean, there's studios in Little Rock, which is the state capital. Great fucking band. Amazing fucking album.
My final pick of the year is Deep Sage by Gouge, released by Death Wish Records. I feel like every Gouge record gets a little less hardcore. It sounds a little less hardcore, but I think with every release, each release gets better, and I think they sound more natural to themselves with each release. And I'm really glad that they got to release this album and they didn't just break up in 2020 like they had planned to. This record carries a lot of influences from alternative rock.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, there's hardcore, there's punk, there's post-hardcore. The song Dallas has some shoegaze influences to my ear. There's grunge influences in Dylan's review for the album. He said he heard some In Utero on it, which I also heard. Tommy, the drummer, is fucking amazing. He's a great drummer. I love his playing. Guitar parts they all seem pretty simple, but they're all so fucking catchy. The songs are catchy in general. Maybe Blue and Deep Sage, the title track, are two of the catchier ones. The song Spaced Out is so fucking good that I wish it were 5 minutes long. I'm so sad that song is like 2 minutes long. And it was so good getting to hear Megan from Punch and Megan from Punch scream again. I loved that part. I love that part of that song. I fucking love the song The Sharpening. It's my favorite song on the album. And I don't know if it was like a conscious callback, but Dallas, the song, kind of like there's a pause and then they go into a very driving part. That part reminded me of the song Ghost from the album Burnt Sugar, their previous album before. But yeah, I really like Gouge. I really like this record. I have seen them in Nashville. I saw them. What's Brian Cook's band's name? The one
Sumac?
that you like, Dylan? No.
Oh, Russian.
Yeah.
Russian Circles.
Yeah. I saw Gouge with Russian Circles in Nashville in 2019, I think. I haven't got to see him since. I don't really want to go to Nashville during the middle of the week to see them, so I hope they come to Louisville or Indianapolis or somewhere closer to me this year. I want to see him again.
Yeah, that was a surprise record for me too. Knew nothing of the band, absolutely nothing. That was one of those releases I knew Swindle was stoked on. I was like, why don't I just do one that I've never really heard? Let's just pick one out of the fucking ether and do it. Really surprised. Yeah, a lot of the grunge influence for sure. Like it definitely seems like a modern take of that. It was a fun release, but you're right. The drums on that record are astounding.
Yeah.
Very kind of reminiscent of like the Frail Body record too, with the drums, like just being these fucking intense and forward pushing things as well.
My last pick of 2024 was a surprise. I did not really know anything about this band. I think I recognized some album artwork, but truthfully had never listened to this band until this record. Was really captivated by the artwork, I think, and I just knew a little bit about their label, Translation Lost Records, having released the Teeth record this year, which was also great. But Oryx, Primordial Sky, this is a 3-piece from Denver, Colorado. Like I said, didn't really know anything about it. I just kind of checked it out just to see what it was about and was completely blown away. It became kind of like a regular rotation of, my commute to work and just kind of chilling out. It's 4 songs. It's 45 minutes long. And I understand that maybe for some people that those longer songs may kind of seem like a little bit of a daunting thing. But when we talked about some of the records on this list. It never felt like it took forever. It like just is a very kind of forward moving album to me. It never, you just blow right through those 45 minutes. It's a huge sounding record. The tone of it is incredible. Yes, it is like a death doom band, but I feel like there is a ton of atmosphere on this record. There's melody. There's like acoustic passages that are really amazing. But yeah, they got riffs. It sounds huge. I know one of the members, the vocalist and guitar player, and also provides some synthesizer work here, Thomas Davis, also makes his own amplifiers. So I'm sure he has a very unique and vast understanding of what he wants out of his guitar tone. Abigail Davis on drums, huge sounding drum kit. I mean, it's just really humbling all over this record. You also have Joshua Kaufman on bass. This is his first recording with the band as well. All in all, was just a really wonderful listening experience for me. If I had to pick a couple tracks, I will say I do feel like you need to listen to this record from front to back. But Myopic and Ephemeral, those are the two middle tracks. I thought those really stuck out to me. There's a really great music video for Ephemeral as well. But I mean, it's just, yeah, I loved it. It was such a surprise. I thought, like I kind of had all of my records in place, really. And then when this kind of snuck in, I was like, yeah, I like kind of whittling it down to 10. I was like, I have to talk about this record. I think it's so great.
I listened to this record begrudgingly at first because you said it's 4 songs and it's 45 minutes long. And I went, absolutely not. Like, I'm so doomed out, so death doomed out. But then I listened to it and I went, okay, it makes sense. Like, it's moving. It doesn't feel like I've sat here for 45 minutes, where, let's face it, we've all sat there. There are bands that will release 6-song records that are an hour long and we're like, fucking end it. Like, get it over with. Let's stop this. He's already dead. And this album doesn't feel that way. When I hear the phrase death doom, I get really, really cagey because it's like, God, just, I hope the doom parts are shorter and there's more death. And this album hits the mark. It's a fun record, fun release. The artwork is fucking interesting.
So fucking cool.
It seems like if you look at it quickly, it does seem like it's digital. It's a digital 3D rendering of some sort, but in reality, it's not. It's an actual painting.
Yeah.
It's a living, breathing thing.
John Harris, who is a renowned British sci-fi artist and illustrator. They saw his artwork he did for NASA. He's done a bunch of other sci-fi artwork in the past, and it just fit this so well. And like the themes of the record, I mean, I could be mistaken, but what I got from it is essentially like kind of talks about man's, like, I don't know if hubris is the right word. It's like, we gotta get out there and like, we gotta like prolong, we deserve to keep existing, and like, what's the next step instead of like being here on Earth? And like, maybe we shouldn't just, maybe we are fated to just kind of be dust and, fade off into the grand scheme of like the universe, really. And that's okay. Exist here now, kind of like the thou thing on previous releases that we've talked about. Like, maybe we're just, fated to be here, and that's okay, and make the best of our planet, not completely just fucking kill it. Do good.
Too late.
Yeah, also that. But I fucking love this record. Fucking so good.
Oh God, so much fucking pressure. All right, last record for me. I think you guys have probably already known what it is. Enter Arma's New Heaven. It's not even crazy. It's not even the word to describe this thing. Weird is not even the word to describe this thing, but just off the wall. I have had a chance to see this band twice. Once with Woe many years ago, a great American black metal band. And the second time was actually with Pallbearer and Gatecreeper in Louisville. Zanzibar, I believe, was the venue. Great story about a boot that we've all kind of share there. But you're welcome.
Sorry,
I knew it was going to take a second.
Yeah, I was like, huh?
But what a fucking release. This album combines everything that I'm a fan of. It goes from like Tom Waits to black metal. There are elements on here that sound like classic rock. There are elements on here that sound like Master of Puppets. There are elements on here that just takes you down a rabbit hole. It's also got this extremely great piece of artwork as the album cover. That's very jarring. Just an out of the blue record. I was not as familiar with this band as I wanted to be. I have since been able to go back and listen to everything this band has done based off this album. It's a masterpiece. It's a masterpiece in the craft that this band does. I mean, there's elements of blues, folk, death, black metal, even some avant-garde stuff on here. The production is crazy. Everybody has their moment to kind of stand out. You can hear every instrument on here. The vocals are fucking wild on this record. It's everything feels like a chapter in a book, and you can still listen to them individually without having to hear the entire record. One of, if not possibly my favorite release of the year. It's had multiple spins for me. I've listened to it while working out. I've gone to sleep listening to it. I've listened to it while reading, and it's the same experience every time. I go further in depth on the album with my review I did for it, so please check that out. But it came out around April of 2024 through one of the greatest labels for underground music of all time, Relapse Records. What a fucking album. What a fucking album.
Well, there we have it. 10 records. Again, I would definitely not take this as like, hey, here's our top 10. Just 10 we really wanted to talk about because there were so many great releases this year. Honestly, for all of the shitty things that happened in 2024, 2024 was an amazing year for a lot of music. Not only in extreme forms of music and hardcore, but just like all around. So many great releases. I definitely wanted to like maybe run I definitely wanted to run through a few of them. If we had like maybe some honorable mentions. I mean,
sure.
Wretched Blessing, the Wretched Blessing EP, fucking great band. Check out. It's like I believe like a handful of songs. I think they're working on some stuff soon. As I mentioned, it's members of Yautja, Immortal Bird. They might be extending that 2-piece lineup into something else, but Noel, As Spoken, another fucking amazing release this year. Definitely an amazing band. I have yet to see them live. I really want to be a part of that experience as well, because it definitely seems like it kind of goes in with that.
That was probably the third release that like was really high up on all three of our like releases for the year. There was like the Sheer Mag one. What was this?
Blood Incantation.
Blood Incantation record and As Spoken by Noel was another album that all three of us liked a lot. It's fucking nasty. It's a nasty record.
It's nasty, and it's not just like it's more than just a grind record, right?
Yeah,
like there's just so much texture and atmosphere to that thing, and it's an experience seeing that band. I'd be remiss to mention the newest Nile release, Vitriol, the Black Dahlia Murder, the Frail Body release, which I think which kind of hit me out of left field, but I know Swindle had that up pretty high on his list for a period of time as well. But like, there's so much shit that we could dig into, and maybe I'll compile a list of everything I listened to this year or something and put that out.
A few other ones that just came off the top of my head. Slime Lord, Chytridiomycosis Relinquished, great record, very grimy sounding record. I know I mentioned
Fear the Geese.
I know I mentioned Collapsed Skull. I definitely wanted to mention that Full of Hell release. Coagulated Bliss was fucking amazing too. Probably one of the coolest things they've ever released thus far as a band. They continue to do so. We talked about Noel, the Pelagius EP that came out as well. Also great. And then, of course, Chained to the Bottom of the Ocean, Sisyphean Cruelty, a really fucking great release as well. I was so felt really great to be able to kind of take part in that, and it was fucking fun record.
Buds. Our buds. I'm using my honorable mentions to not talk about heavy music. someone that doesn't need any help at all. He has enough money, but Kendrick Lamar, he released the album GNX this year. Vince Staples released an album called Dark Times, which falls in line with many of my picks in heavy music. But Vince Staples is a lot of fun, and he's very funny, and his rap is also real good. In kind of like the country area, Hooray for the Riff Raff released an album called The Past is Still Alive. I like that a lot. And one of my favorite records for the entire year, fucking Tiger's Blood by Waxahachie. I love that goddamn record. I fucking love Waxahachie. What a record.
I agree. Well, anything else we want to add or plug?
We shouldn't plug anything, right?
No, don't plug it.
We're not getting paid for it.
None of our other shit. Don't check out anything.
Well, it's been a hell of a year. As we mentioned, it's been such a fun year. All the people that we've gotten to talk to, and music that we've gotten to kind of go back and discuss. We're gonna keep doing it in 2025. So I definitely appreciate anyone who has listened to us this year and reached out to us via email, riffworshippod@gmail.com. You can follow us at riffworshippod, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. We have playlists that get updated frequently, featuring a lot of the music that we discussed here today. Riffs on repeat, Spotify, Hits from the Crypt on Apple Music. Dylan, of course, does reviews from the Dillbozer's Den on YouTube. We've already kind of selected a bunch of records we're going to talk about. January is looking pretty fun. We're going to have a guest that we've actually even discussed here on this episode.
Yep.
So stay tuned for that. Again, you can follow us anywhere we have socials, but for the first time in 2025, for me, for Swindle, for Dylan, you're listening to Riff Worship. We'll be back next week with something else. See ya. Bye.
I smacked the microphone.
You
Sorry.
fucker.